Hey everybody, Kimberly here with Starfish Designs. Today we are working on the MetroMojo mobile crossbody. Oh my god, I've had so much fun with this bag. Had it kind of in the back of my head for a while, but I just had to get it out. I'm starting to get a little stronger and being able to do more videos. So this is the original tester. Got the flap off just a little bit, but this is 6x8 and it's perfect to fit the largest iPhones. I'm not sure what all phones it'll fit, but it fits the largest iPhones. She has this vertical pocket here, fully lined inside, and it's structured in a way that the seam doesn't get caught in the final seams. Then you open it up and you have the nice interior to put your phone. And then a snap closure. Got my flap a little bit off, but that's okay. And this is one of our flat bottom girl series bags. So we create a gusset at the bottom of the bag. And so this material here, switching to the back, cannot be directional. So this one is kind of fun with the suede, faux suede from My Punk Embroidery, but it did take, I had to move up to a 116 needle. It was a little bit troubling on my machine, but I made it. This one, there will be an edit to this before you all buy it, because you see this side is just a little too narrow. But I did this in color blocked interfaced cottons. And one thing to mention is that the flap actually gets stitched in hoop 1. And I like to try and take advantage of the placements or the stabilizer as much as I can. So you'll see the flap is actually stitched before the zipper, and then you trim it, and then you add it on these panels. And then before you add these panels, you go ahead and cut out the flap. If that seems way too difficult for you, I am including the flaps only in a separate hooping 5x7, so you can do a small hooping just for the flap if you don't want to fuss with that. If that's the case, if you decide to do it that way, then just skip those steps in the PDF. But here she is, and she's only got D-ring side connectors because it's just too difficult to put them up there too. If you want to work in some skinny ones, go for it. You might want to use a skinnier flap. It's fine. This one I decided to try these screw-in. They're meant for shoelaces. I'm not going to say I love it. No, not at all. I really don't. It's coming off. I need to use some strong glue on it or something. And then the inside, you see the silver on it. So I'm not in love with that, which is unfortunate because I ordered a whole bunch of them. So I probably will try and re-gift those in my local community. There's people who do all kinds of crafts. Okay, so this is the Metro Mojo, and she comes in 4 sizes. So it should be just 5x7, 6x8, 7x9, and 8x10. How about that? Should work for any of your needs. Okay, guys, let's get ready for making the bag. Okay, so let's go over the materials we're going to need for the Metro Mojo. Okay, so I'm going to do this version in a color block method. So the first thing we're going to need is for our flap. So we're going to need, I'm doing all cotton woven. So all my external pieces have been fused with So Fuse Plus. You can use anything comparable, Decovil Light. Just make sure you can, once you get those layers added up, that you'll be able to use your machine to do it. So this is the front and this is the back. And I don't have my, I gotta label them yet. Sorry, I haven't labeled them yet. So they'll be labeled in the PDF, so you'll know. You can put a sticky note or something and label or write on the back which piece it is, because some of these are very similar. So this is going to be our flap. Then on the right side of the zipper, we're going to have this purple. And on the middle portion of the zipper, the bag, you're going to have this yellow, then this green or this orange at the top. Then this blue is going to be for our bottom, and it'll wrap to the back. So you do not want directional material. So this is not really directional. You can place it either way in the same pattern. So you don't want directional material, because if you do, when you flip it to the back, it's going to be upside down on the back. So that's our external pieces. We're going to leave this piece ready because we're going to start with our flap. And if it helps you to lay these out, which I'm going to do so I don't get confused somewhere, lay them out. Then we need a long section for our main bag lining. And then this is going to be for our zipper pocket lining, for the front zipper pocket. And we're also going to need some zipper tape. I prefer zipper by the yard, but you can use a regular polyester tape, but you just need to make sure the teeth in between the metal bits is as long as recommended. So when you're using a pre-made zipper, if it says you need 10 inches of this, you're probably looking at a 12-inch pre-made zipper to an 11-inch, because I do give some extra clearance on it, but in an ideal world, you don't want to run into those little bits. So I actually, when I use a pre-made one, I actually cut off the ends so I don't risk doing that. Okay, so then we're going to need D-ring strap connectors. So I have 2 of those, and I'm using, this is going to be a small bag. I'm trying the 5x7. So I just want to show you briefly how I do these small D-ring strap connectors, because my machine, Janome 500E, is not strong enough to go through really thick layers. So this is a trick that I figured out a little bit ago, to give some extra interfacing to the fabric, because if you just use 1 layer or 2 layers of folded over fabric, it's going to get worn down over time as that bag is getting pulled and pulled and pulled. So what I do is I cut it twice as wide as the hardware, this piece. So this is a 1/2 inch. So I cut my strip 1 inch by 3 inches, always 3 inches, because I like to have a little bit of hangover on the top of the bag, and I don't want to get the D-ring strap connector too close to my presser foot. So this is already done, so it's kind of hard to see. So what I do is I fold it in half, mark that mark, or you can use a pen, and then I fold both long ends into the center. So that establishes my this side of it, so you can kind of see the line. Then this is a trick. I cut the fusible interfacing at 2 inches by just under a 1/2 inch, like a couple of threads shy of a 1/2 inch. And then I put them, so the glue side is facing up in the center. So glue side is facing up, and you can kind of see a little bit here. And then I press it down. So the glue side holds all these little edges in so they don't fray over time. And they shouldn't really, you shouldn't be getting that much work on it, but just in case. But this is how we can do a fabric D-ring strap connector on our bags and not overload our machine. So that works well with most of the bags I've done. If you do double layers of fabric, it's still not strong enough. You need that interfacing in there. So if you did the traditional where you fold it over again, then it would be too thick. That's just what I found, at least for my machine. So the next thing we're going to do, I've already done it, is we're going to load our design into our machine. And since I'm using this lanyard style tripod, I can kind of show you stuff on my computer, or I'm sorry, on my embroidery machine. So here we go. I've already stitched out the placement, but what you're going to do is load your design. And then once you have it on your hoop, you want to trace and make sure that the design, I never talk about this, and I should because somebody made a comment about it. You want to trace and make sure your design actually fits in the hoop you picked, just in case your machine won't tell you and you don't want to break a needle. So on my machine, I can press this little button right here. Can you see it? And that's going to do, oh, I got to raise my presser foot. That's going to do a trace around. And if I do this one right here in the middle, is what I usually always do. It just goes all the way around. And then you can see the presser foot will go around, and you can make sure it's all going to fit in your hoop. So if your presser foot was getting too close to the side of your hoop there, that might be an issue. Okay, I'm going to be right back. Okay, so I've got this all stitched out. I went ahead and did it for you in advance. And let's point out all the stuff that's stitched on this page, or on the stabilizer. So I have no-show poly mesh. That's what I prefer. Now for the second hooping, You might want to use a wash away because we're going to have an opening up here. And if you're not really good at getting stabilizer out, it might show in the finished bag. So what you can do is a window pane method where you cut this out, then glue in, and I might do that on the next one and show you, and then hoop in the wash away, because wash away is expensive and you don't want to waste all that extra. You only need it for this space. I will show you on the next one if I remember. Anyway, so this is the flap outline, so you know how to position the flap, and there's a little tick mark here for the centering of that. And this is the zipper placement line. And this is just an overall outline of the bag that will also be on hoop 2. That might help you arrange your hoop 1 onto hoop 2 when we get to that. So this got really close to that outline line. That's fine. This is a zipper placement line. So you see there's 3 lines. So when you're using a number 3 zipper tape, which is 1 inch wide, you're going to position that zipper tape right in between these 2 outer lines. If you are using a number 5 zipper tape, which is my preference, but since this is a small bag, I went ahead and did this in the number 3. The number 5 zipper tape is 1 1/4 inches wide. So you can see it's kind of hard to even that in there, right? If you look at the back of the zipper tape, and in most zipper tapes you can tell, sometimes it's a little hard on a dark one. There's a line that's formed here, the negative space when the zipper teeth is opened. You're going to line that line up with the center placement line. And in fact, your number 3 zipper should be the same way too. But I find if I tried to just give you this one line and say to line it up, it's not easy, right? You need more spatial awareness of where this is going to be able to place this, right? So that's why I do 3 lines and not just 1 line, if you're wondering. So I can still eyeball this and see that I still have an even amount on both sides of this as well. So I have 2 areas of that. So what I do is I bring it to the opposite end of the closed end of the zipper. So in this case, we're doing a vertical bag. This is gonna be my closed end. So I come down here and I start, and then what I do is I tape this down, and then I flip it around and just kind of roll the zipper tape down, following this line. So you'd roll it down following this line. But today we're using the number 3 zipper tape. So we can actually just go ahead and tape this down using 3M transport tape. This is clear tape, and I find you can get a good 3 or 4 uses out of it before it wears up. It doesn't generally gummy up my needle too much, but every once in a while, if it does, I just use some rubbing alcohol and rub it off of it. So now since I'm using this, I'm going to overlap this. It's going to get trimmed off by about 1/2 inch. That just gives us working space for it, so it's not too short. And again, I'm lining it up. Oh, my stitching came undone there. I'm lining it up in between those 2 outer lines, and you'll see that it lines up very well. Now, every once in a while, you're going to find zipper tape that is not 1 1/4. I have some that is only 1, the kind that has the resin teeth. It's actually only 1 1/8. So that'll throw you. But just go ahead and line it up as you're going down in between those 2 lines. And I like to just put as close to the edge as I can, zip some tape. I do one side, and then I'll come back in and reinforce it on the other side. And I cut this way too long. I don't want to waste so much zipper tape, but you don't need to cut yours this long. Just follow the PDF. And then I'm going to go ahead and roll this. Or you want to make sure it's taut is what I'm trying to say. I'm still having some issues with my aphasia ever since my medical emergency 18 months ago. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tape this down just to make sure it doesn't come loose. So there's where we're at right now. And now we have that positioned. We're going to go ahead and lay this piece down. This is going to be our lining side of our flap. And actually, I did this backwards. It's okay. We can do the tape. It's fine. We did the zipper already. We could have just done the flap first, but you can do the flap first and then do the zipper, however you want to do it. But this is more stable right now. The most stable it's going to be, so I prefer to do it that way. So I went ahead and added a snap placement line for you, so in case you want help centering this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down, make sure it's, I cut it very large, but make sure it's centered over this tick mark and evenly spaced around everywhere. So in fact on the top, so it's easier when I turn it, I'm going to make sure it's just overlapping about a half an inch at the top. Okay, and then if you're skipping the placement snap, then you'll just lay this on top, and so they'll be right sides facing together for this next step. But I'm going to go ahead and run that placement snap placement. I don't know what's going on with this machine. Oh, and I didn't go over the tools that we're going to need. I'm sorry, I'm out of sight because I'm doing the needle. I apologize about that. I was doing threading my needle. The tools that I use are these 7205 Kai scissors. They are worth the money. They are anywhere from $35 to $50 on Amazon. Depends on the seller and the day. This is my Alex Anderson 4-in-1 Essentials tool. I love this. It's got a little wood iron here, then a seam ripper on this side, and a little pokey device, and a stiletto on this side. Absolutely love it. Can't work without it. I might need these to help trim out the pieces with the duckbills on it. And then I use a marking pen. This is my favorite one, the Air Erasing Sew Line. And then I'm not going to go over the iron. You know how to do you have an iron. So I'm going to go ahead and run this step 2 for you. And we'll do that on camera since it's quick step. And if you don't want this later, if it's showing because you're using a smaller snap, then you can go ahead and just pull those stitches out. I tried to make it large enough to do that. And that's a little large. I'll probably make that little one a little bit smaller because it's a little large. Okay, now we're going to place this. And again, if your flap is directional, you want to make sure this is the top of your flap. So when you want to lay this like this, if it's directional. You want to lay it this direction and then flip it over on here. And then make sure it's even at the top here with the lining side of it. And then you can tape this down to hold it in place. I just use one at each corner. Okay, I'm going to run step 3, which is going to stitch this, and I'll be right back. Okay, step 3 is done, so we have the outline and our final seam. So now we want to go ahead and trim that down. We want to make sure we clear the zipper. So I'm going to let me remove this tape. I'm going to kind of fold it back because we want to clear our zipper regardless of which size you're using. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this back here, press it, and then I can tell how much zipper there I have. And I'm going to trim it to probably about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm using my duck bills to do that. And then if it is a little too close for comfort, when you're doing the zipper, we're going to cut this out later. But if it's too close to the zipper, then fold it over and just hold it down with tape. This is the only one that's going to be close because it's so small. Okay, so I've already got the zipper. We've already discussed that. So I'm going to run step 4, which is going to tack the zipper down, and I'll be right back. Okay, so our zipper is all taped down, and then we're going to remove this tape. And like I said, I get several uses out of it. Be careful tearing it away when it's on the stitches because this is just a simple tack down. So it's not like a bean or anything, so it's not really strong. You don't want to pull the zipper out. And you see I have a few pieces here where the zipper is on, or the tape is on that side. Just reach in and pull it off. If you pull a little bit out, it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so I'm going to look over here at my position that I have everything. And now we're going to stitch down this part of the zipper with the zipper lining and this panel. So I need this panel I was going to use for there. And I need my zipper pocket. So we're going to go to the back of the hoop. And when you're doing an in the hoop bag, there's a lot of flipping back and forth, front to back. So you need to be very mindful of where everything is at and that you don't on accident unhoop your hoop, which I almost just did. Okay, so now we're going to make sure you're in the right orientation. So we're going to want our lining to, it's going to eventually come here, but we're going to place it there against the tape on the back. So make sure you're in this orientation and just flip it like this. That way you'll know for sure where it's going to go. And we're going to center this right side facing down over the zipper, and it's going to be lined up with this bottom of your zipper right there. So you can see it through the stabilizer, or it'll be the placement line. So go ahead and line that up. I'm going to center it here. Apologies about the dog. Okay, so now immediately you're going to see an issue. And I did this on purpose. I was actually going to flip it so I didn't run into this problem. But I wanted to do it so I can show you what to do if you do run into this problem. Could be this bag or another one. What happens if you have the fabric and it's too close to your hoop attachment? What I do is I just kind of roll it up like a roll of foil or something. Just kind of roll it up as tightly as you can. And you just need it to bypass your hoop attachment and be out of the way of your zipper. So our zipper is going to stitch right there. It's going to stitch right there, so it's out of the way there. One more fold under, and then we're going to tape it down. So what would have been a better way to do for this particular bag, because my hoop attachment is on the right, and I'm doing a zipper on the right, is to do it, have flipped it the other direction, rotated it 180 degrees. But like I said, I did it on purpose like this so I could show you what to do if you run into this problem. So now we have a clearance for our, I need to put a little piece there. It's pulling a little bit when I rolled it up. We want to make sure we catch the entire lining in our seam. Okay, so there's that, is all ready to go. Now we're going to flip to this side, and we're going to, again, right side facing up. This is what we want positioned over here, right? And then we're going to position this, so if it's right side facing up, this is what, I have it backwards, that's why. I don't want the selvage edge. This is where it's going to be. Then we make sure it's the right side there, right direction, and then just flip it over this way. Let me do that again. So make sure if it's directional, if this panel's directional, lay it right side up this way, and then just flip it over, and it'll be correct. And then again, we're going to center this over our zipper and tape it down. So I do what's called the stitch and flip method. I'm not going to take ownership of claiming that. I just started using that term years ago because it's how I do it. I do this, make all my bags as close to a sewing pattern as I can. So in sewing, you always stitch and then you open it and top stitch. It gives extra security, especially to zippers. So we're going to do a stitch and flip. So I'm going to go ahead and run step 5, which is going to stitch this down. Then I'm going to go fold the lining and this over, open it up, finger press it, and then we're going to run the top stitching. So let me run step 5 and I'll be right back. Okay, so there's our stitch, and then we're going to remove our tape and flip it over. And if you're wondering about the tape or this thread, I'm using they call it sewing string. It's kind of cute. Sewing string from Wizardry Stitchery and Crafts, Geeky Hardware. And this one is called Groovy, and it's all the very primary colors, but in neon colors. I forgot to remove this piece of tape down here. And then also she has all the matching neon solids now too. So in love with it, and usually my machine loves it. I'm having some issues with looping right now. I think I need to dust her off and give her a good oiling. She's really been, I should have done that first because she's been sitting for a long time. Okay, so now we're going to unroll this, and then carefully we're going to finger press this with our finger. You know, you don't want to use anything else because you don't want to push the stabilizer. And then I'm going to hold on to this right here as I flip it over to make sure it stays loose here. Now we're going to do the same thing here, and this time you can use a rolling tool if you need to, because we're going to hold this pressed against our table like this. So you can go ahead, and this is cotton woven, so finger will be fine. But if you're using vinyl, you would probably want to use vinyl. So we would go like this against the hard surface. Okay. Now we're going to run step 6, which is our top stitch. I got a loose thread in there. You should always trim those when you can. It's going to drive me crazy. Okay, step 6 is going to be our top stitch, and I'll be right back. There we are now. So now we want to go ahead and do the other side of our zipper pocket and this panel. So we're going to flip to the back side, but before we do that, we need to remove this stabilizer. Unless you're using a really clean cutting tearaway, which if you are, let me know what you're using, because I've not found any that I like that really cleanly cut. So what I like to do is I like to turn it so the seam is away from me. I get my seam ripper and I get it right underneath the stabilizer. And that way I can see the blade under the stabilizer. If I can't see my blade, then I pull it out and redo it, because you don't want to cut into your zipper. But I don't know if you can see that. You can see the blade moving around. So then hold your stabilizer tautly and then just slice this seam ripper right across the seam, and it's just going to pull the stabilizer right out of that seam, so you get very little stabilizer left behind. And then put your lid back on, because I'm always losing this stuff. And then for the other pieces, I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors, and I want to cut just shy of that thread there. We don't want to cut, that's what's holding our zipper together to the stabilizer. So we're going to trim it out just shy of that. Let me see if I can get this rotated for you better, so I can actually do it and show you at the same time. So just shy of that thread, that seam that's holding the stabilizer and zipper together. All right, and just trim it all the way down. You can just kind of slice it across in real time when you're not trying to show somebody. And that leaves just a hair of the stabilizer. A little bit too much right there. Let me trim that a little more. Just a hair of stabilizer, but you shouldn't see it in your seam. And this is the inside of the pocket anyway. Nobody's going to be turning your pocket inside out to see if there's stabilizer in a seam. Okay, and then just go ahead and flip it around and trim off this corner here. Make sure you don't trim anything else out. All right, so that's done. Now let's go ahead, and we need to make sure, this is cut a little generously. We need to make sure that this edge of our pocket is not close to this line. So this is going to be our final seam allowance, and the bag is going to be close to this, just a little bit inside. So if you want, you can use the edge of your flap as a marker, or just measure in about 1/2 inch from that. In this case, I cut it almost perfectly. So I'm just going to use the edge of my flap, and I'm going to fold this in half, fold it to that line, and then tape it down. So it might be a little bit far higher up over here, and that's fine, because we're going to trim it before we're done. All right, and I do not want this piece to come up while we're stitching, so I'm going to go ahead and tape it down right there. Okay, so this is where we're at now. That's our zipper pocket lining. Now flip it back over, and now you want to grab your right side panel for the right side of the zipper. And again, if it's positional, position it where you want it, and then flip it over. We're going to stitch to the side here. So go ahead, and I'm going to flip this around and make sure I can see that I'm centered over my zipper. I don't want to be centered on that placement line. I want to be centered between here and here, where my zipper is. And put that right at the edge of your zipper. And tape it down. The beauty of the way I do the zipper tape is that you don't have to buy 2 different patterns to use the number 3 or number 5 pattern or zipper for my designs. One is it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the stitch and flip now. So I'm going to run 7 and 8. 7 is going to stitch this down. We're not going to turn anything else over on the lining side. We don't need to top stitch that. Then I'm going to flip it open, finger press it, and then we're going to go to, I'm going to run step 8. So I'm going to meet you back here before step 9. Okay, so here's where we're at now. So we have this nicely done. I'm going to trim those threads. Now what we have to do, we're going to be stitching the bottom and the top on here now. Before we can do that, we need to do 2 things. We need to remove the flap from underneath, and we need to move the zipper pull down. So use your best applique scissors so you can get really close to that flap stabilizer. And you can even use a seam ripper. Sometimes works really well in this case. And you want to just try and trim this out without unhooping your project. So I'm going to start over here and just kind of pull it along so you can raise it up and try not to cut into that original placement line. Can you see what I'm doing? There we go. And just roll your seam ripper around that seam. And you want to raise it up so you don't cut into you have your zipper pocket right under there, see? You want to raise it up. See, I can see my blade through there. You don't want to cut your zipper pocket. If you don't trust yourself with that, then use your duckbill scissors. So then you know you're not going to cut into something that you shouldn't cut into. Sorry, I'm trying to do this so you can see it. Make sure you know where your blade is at all times so you don't trim out the pocket. And if this absolutely terrifies you to do it this way, if you haven't started the bag yet and this terrifies you to try and do this sneaky flap thing, then, just run this step on a separate hooping of stabilizer and call it a day. You'll just have 3 hoopings instead of 2 for your project. But I like to try and save stabilizer wherever I can. Now I trimmed that out so I could keep this little tick mark in there because I want to go ahead and transfer that to the flap. But let's finish this here first. So now you can see we have a little bit of loosey-goosey going on here, so we want to be very careful. And I actually cut away the stabilizer that this was taped to. So I'm going to flip it around and add some more tape because I don't want this to come undone. I'm going to try and add the tape out of the seam allowance. Oh, it's going to be in the seam allowance. That's fine. We just don't want this to come undone. Okay. There we go. So now we're going to move our zipper pull down. Keep that tape so we can keep it out of the way. And then where do you see the top stitching ending here? Go ahead and put a piece of tape right there above the top stitching so that when the presser foot comes around here, it doesn't pull up the flange. I'm going to keep you running for step 9. Check this one more time. Step 9 is going to give us a placement line for the top border of our bag. Okay, so this is our placement line. So let's go ahead. Oops, that tape actually came right off on my presser foot. We're going to lay our top panel. This is now the top one. In the same situation, if it's directional, lay it in the direction and then flip it down. So we want to center this over this stitching here. And it's going to overhang about a 1/2 inch at least on either side. Right here's the stitching ends right here. It's going to overhang. Just make sure it's even on both sides because this is going to form the seam allowance for your bag. So you do not want to do this. If you do this, then there's not going to be any seam allowance for your bag. So you need to have this centered over the zipper and you have an even amount on both sides. And you can eyeball that if you need to and you don't trust yourself, get a ruler out and measure it. And then we're going to tape this down. And then we're going to do the stitch and flip. We're going to stitch it with step number 10, flip it up and do the top stitching with step 11. So I'm going to do that off camera and I'll be back with you before we start 12. I lied to you. I'm going to come back because I forgot we have to trim the extra. I want to show you that. So let me remove the tape. So that was step 10. Let's trim out these little tails. And then you can see how we have a lot of zipper tape left over here. We don't need all that in our final bag seam. So we're going to go ahead and just fold this down out of the way and trim off that extra seam. This piece here doesn't really matter. You can trim it if you want. It is a little long. I'll trim a little bit off, but it doesn't really need to be trimmed that much. It's best just to leave it in. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and fold this up. And you guys are going to ask me what this fabric is from, and I cannot remember. I fell in love with it. I saw it in somebody's bag, and I had to search all over, and I finally found it on Etsy. It was from several years ago. But if I do find it, I'll put it in the comments below. Okay. Go ahead and tape this down on both ends. Okay, I'm going to run step 11, and I'll be right back. So here we are so far. And you see our pocket would have gotten caught back here. So now we're going to run step 12, which is the placement for down here. Sometimes when you get this close, well, I really cut it close with this piece of material. It's going to not leave much of a seam allowance. I need to double check my measurements. Oh, I think I know what I did wrong. This is like 5 by 5.5, and I put it down the wrong way. I'm just going to make that a 5.5 square to eliminate any errors. So sometimes when the presser foot comes around, it's going to hit here and it might bump it up. If yours is really thick there, just put a piece of tape there to hold it. I'm not worrying about it because mine's not on this particular bag. I'll be right back after I run step 12. Okay, and I lied to you. That was step 12 and 13. I added this step here. It's just a very light based for you to use to line this up on hoop 2 when we get to it. So there's a tiny little tick mark here, and then a little leg at each end. Hopefully it won't come out, but this will just help you line it up when we do hoop 2. So now I've run this step, and man, did I barely catch that. So we're going to take our final panel. This one has got to be non-directional, and we're going to trim this thread. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line it up so it's centered, and down here you can actually see a little bit more of the hoop. So if you needed to, you could actually fold this in half, because I made it a tick mark there for you to center it with. And there's the centering mark. That'll help you make sure it's centered. And this is cut nice and generous, so there's plenty of room on both sides. All right, tape this down. And then that's it. We're going to run step 14, which is the tack down, and then step 15, which is the top stitch. So I'm going to do 14, fold it down, top stitch it, and then we're going to stop. You'll see there's a step 16, but that is just to make sure the machine doesn't go back to the center when it's all done with the design. You're going to just stop after step 15. I'll be right back. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I lined this up at the wrong place. I'm lining it up down here. The center mark is for you to measure, but you need to line it up with this one. It needs to line up here, not down here. I'm so sorry about that. Good thing I hadn't gone any farther. Okay. There we go. Now it's correct. And the reason I noticed that and why you would notice it is because when I got on here, the presser foot was like way up here. I'm like, no, it shouldn't be that far. So, okay. I will be back in just one moment. Okay. So here we are. There is our bag. And this is going to flip to the back when it's all said and done. So go ahead and remove all the loose tape that you can find around on the hoop, on the front and the back. And then we're going to unhoop this. And don't worry about trimming down any of the edges right now, because we don't want to lose our registration mark, first of all. And secondly, you can just trim it on the bag when we're all done. So you can get all this tape off. Okay, you don't need to watch me do that, so you know how to do that. So you'll see our pocket over here did not get caught up, so we're fine. We don't have to worry about that being in our final seam allowance. And then you can go ahead. That is one thing you can trim right now. You can trim on top of the zipper. And this is really close to the edge here, the stitching. So, but it's folded over, so you can fold it away and trim away this extra on the top of the zipper pocket. And you can get down to 1/8 of an inch there. Just trim this away. And you actually could have done that before the last step. I should have told you that before you stitch this in, but that's okay. Okay, so this is going to be all done. And then I'm going to hoop the next one. So then what I want to show you is we have our registration mark for centering our flap on the bag. So you want to transfer that registration mark that was stitched here and transfer that onto your flap before you trim out the stabilizer. And you're going to be careful trimming out the stabilizer because you have that little snappy placement in there. But go ahead and trim out the stabilizer, leaving that around, and making sure you don't pull out that seam is what I meant to say. Let's see, it works really well with these scissors here. So now just go ahead and work around that little placement circle for our snap. And what you could do actually is take a piece of, to give some more strength to the snap, you can put a piece of So-Fuse Plus or even just back it up with a piece of the stabilizer to give a little bit more strength to the zipper or to this snap when we put it in. For now, I'm going to go ahead and trim around. I'm going to use my pinking scissors just to reduce the bulk and the curve a little bit. And so I don't want to get close to that stitching, but just kind of get as close as you can, but don't cut into it. And it's actually easier to see from the other side. I don't know what I was thinking. And just around the curve, you need the pinking scissors. And then you can grab your regular scissors and trim out the rest to about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. Again, leave the top alone. And then what you're going to do is just turn this right side out. And then you can press it if you want with your iron to make sure it stays there. But once you turn it right side out, what you want to do is push the edges out all along the curved edges. So you have a nice smooth flap. So this tool comes in handy for that purpose too. And I'm going to put my flap on at the very end. I like to wait because I want to make sure, I'm sorry, my snap. I'm going to put it on at the end. So that I can make sure I have everything else lined up right. Okay, I don't know why this is giving me difficulty today. Anyway, I don't want to waste time on the camera. So anyway, you're going to get that worked all the way out. And what you want to do is, this is the exterior. You want to kind of roll the seam with your fingers so that you're kind of separating this out, but pushing the lining side slightly to the back, and then finger crease it. And then once you're all done, you can go ahead and hem it, or I'm sorry, press it with an iron and or top stitch it on a regular sewing machine. So I'm going to fix this, get hoop 2 ready, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I promised you guys I was going to show you how to do the tuck in the wash away stabilizer, and I forgot. So I already stitched out my placement line, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and redo it anyway. So I'm carefully going to go ahead and cut out this and then tape this down, but normally I'd hoop this in place. So I'm going to go ahead and use my seam ripper, and because this is really taut, so it's better if you can hoop it with your other piece, but I don't want to ruin my entire hooping here. So this should be fine. We're going to tape it really well. So we're going to just trim out this little section, because this is where our seam's going to be for our bag that we're going to have to cut out. So then I'm going to go ahead and put this back in and rerun the step so we have the outline here, because we need that. So anyway, I'm going to tape this in and rerun step 1, and I'll be right back. Here we go. So I went ahead, and it's a little long here, so I'm going to trim it out a little bit there because we're not planning on washing this bag, and I want the extra stabilizer, so I'm just going to trim a little bit of this out. But not a whole lot, because we need that added in there for the stabilization of the main stabilizer. Okay, trim out these tails. All right. I'm going to leave the extra tape in there for right now, and we'll move that at the end because it's helping to keep this tear away, or I'm sorry, wash away. I'm sorry, I'm losing my tripod here. It's helping to keep this stabilized. So the first thing we're going to do is mark our registration marks for everything. So down here, there's a line, and go ahead, you can freeform it or get a ruler if you want. Extend this line out, extend these lines out. This is going to help us line everything up. Extend these lines out here and here. And then you'll see there's a little tick mark here and a little tick mark there. And this is just going to help us line everything up better because my first one was a little crooked. Okay, so now on this panel here, remember we talked about those little feet and the little tick mark? So we're going to lay this down. So your bag is, this is your bag, right? So remember how we did it before, we need to stitch and flip. So if this is our bag, our right side of our bag, then we need to flip it like that. So it's going to flip it over. And then go ahead and fold back on this line of stitching. Okay, so fold back on that line. And if you're having trouble seeing these little marks because of your material, then go ahead and use your pen and just kind of extend those as well. Okay, so now what you want to do is line this stitching line up with this line here, the bottom line. So those little ankles should just meet the end of the stitching on both sides. Do you see that? So on both sides they meet the stitching right here and right here. And then the center mark meets right there. This is the most critical part of the bag. If you do not line this up, your whole bag is going to be crooked. Ask Kimberly how she knows. The first one I did was not even. So I'm just creasing this to make sure it's down tight. And now I'm going to open this up carefully and I'm going to get my tape and tape it down. So make sure it does not move on me. If you're good with pins, since this is all cotton, you can actually use pins to do that. You pin through it, because as long as it's out of the stitch area. Okay, that piece is done. This is so critical that after I run step 2, which is going to tack that down, I'm going to actually pull it out and make sure it's matching. So that's the front. I should have done the back first. I'm sorry. So the back is the same thing. We're going to line it up with that tick mark. So this time I don't have this marked on here, so I'm just folding it in half and creasing it. And I have the selvage in here. It should get cut off, but that's okay. So we're going to line it up with that line, the bottom line, center it there. And you want, this is the placement line, so you want this to be right there. I'm actually going to take it just a little smidge over because I tear my fabric, and so there's a tear there. So that material is not quite as strong there. And we're going to tape this down. So this is why I recommend watching the video or going through the PDF before you start a project, because you need to know how to position this in your hoop. So we have all this mess here. So now I'm going to carefully flip this over and make sure that the lining is out. This is out. Okay, everything is lined up. Now get it underneath your hoop. Okay. And then I'm going to run step. There's a lot of extra material here. Don't let that scare you. I'm going to run step 2. And I'll be right back. Did purposely make these pieces a little bit wider because it's just easier to handle. One thing I should have done, and I think I still can, is trim this pocket a little bit, just so it's not in our final. Okay, so now before we continue, like I said, I'm going to remove this tape, and I want to make sure that this is still positioned exactly how I had it, because the straighter this is positioned, the better. And there we go. It's still positioned right on that seam. So there's our tack down, and we're still on that position. So now we're going to go ahead and You can go ahead and trim some of this away now. You know, 1/2 inch or so, 1/4 inch, whatever you're comfortable with. Well, we did our stitch, and we're gonna do our flips. So we're gonna go to the back. Oh, what happened to my tape there? Oh, there it is, it's on the machine. Gotta be careful with that tape. I didn't press it down well enough, and it's on the bed of the machine. Now here we wanna really pull this tautly, but not too tautly, because we don't want this seam or this material to be showing in the front of our seam. So just make sure it's as taut as you can get it. And again, if you need to, you can tip or pin it out of sight. I think I have some pins in here. These flower pin ones work best, so you can actually just on the other side or even here. Usually the flower pins you can do on the bottom as long as they're flat. And just kind of pin it, get it up into the stabilizer. That helps. And it's going to hold it tautly. Likewise, you could flip it to the front, pull it tautly from here, make sure it's taut, and put a pin in there. You just want to make sure the pins are out of the stitch area. We're still stitching up there, so we're fine. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing up here. We're going to go ahead and fold this down. And you see we have very little space to work here, because this is going to get cut out later. So I'm finger pressing it down. I'm trying to kind of look through the stabilizer, make sure I don't see the lining. And now I'm going to go ahead and tape this down. And again, you can use this pin if it's easier, which might be on this case because I don't have anything to really tape to. But it's that Deco or Sofuse Plus makes the side a little bit rigid, so it kind of keeps its fold. Okay, so now I'm going to run step 3, which is the top stitching, and then I'll be right back. Here we go. We have our top stitching done. One thing to be mindful of, I say it often, make sure you know where your presser foot's going in relation to your hoop, because mine just came up here and went whoop like this, and it might have hit that zipper. So you need to be careful of that and be paying attention to where it's at. So I'm going to tape that down. So now this is done for now. We're going to do our pleating method. So with a pleating, what we're going to do is stitch the pleats in that is going to form the gusset of our bag. So leave everything as it is right now. And we're going to run this stitch marker, pleat marker number 1. And what's that going to do, I'll leave the camera rolling for this one. So it's going to stitch the base of our bag. And this is like really the critical part. This is where it went wrong on my first one because the materials were so thick. So you have to be really careful of that. So my alignment got slightly askew. But I'll show you the trick to make sure it stays even. Okay, so that just stitched these little legs. And there's a tiny little, there's a tiny little lip right here. So you're going to go ahead, first you're going to go to the back and do the lining. You're going to fold this lining. Let's take our pins out. I forgot about the pins. See, this is why I shouldn't use pins, because I forgot we had those in there. Glad I didn't stitch over it. Okay, so go to the back and the lining. And you have the same legs there, of course. You're going to fold the lining up and gently finger press it. Now for the lining, because to reduce the thickness in the bag and make it not so baggy, I actually kind of fold it slightly above this stitch line. And it just kind of takes some of the extra away from the bag, so it's not so loosey-goosey. In the sewing world, they would take and make a shorter seam allowance, or I'm sorry, a greater seam allowance on the lining to help avoid that extra looseness. But we can't do that in the hoop bag. Okay, so that's stitched there. Flip that over carefully. Always know where your lining's at. And now we're going to stitch this stitch. I keep saying stitch. We're going to fold this up to the pleat marker. And you don't want to pull too hard because you could pull those stitches right out. And then again, you see here the stitch line? This should be right on top of that stitch line. Your folded edge should be right on top of that stitch line. And if you can make sure every time you do the pleat and fold, and make sure that that's like that, you should come out with a straight bag. Yeah, this is kind of a little bit harder over here to tape it. So you'll just want to kind of keep your fingers out of the way, but watch it as it does the next stitch markers. But make sure, you know, if it gets loose, you don't put your fingers in there. Stop the machine. Okay, so we're going to run 5. I'm just going to roll you guys through with these steps because they're so short. And see how mine does all this craziness. Sometimes it comes off and then gets stuck under here. So you just need to be mindful. Now, if you are a Janome 500 or 550E user like myself, then you benefit. I actually digitize to try and avoid those pitfalls. Okay, so we've trimmed that tails. Let's move to the back. On tape. Where's my tape at? It's hard to see through. I have to pull this up so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, now we're going to fold this down against those stitch markers. And this time we want to gently press because we don't want to have a big thick seam, or it's not seam, a pleat fold in our bag at the end. You'll see why. Okay. So fold that down. We're going to flip it over, make sure we know where our lining's at. And then we're going to fold this down. So this should be even across the top. And then if you look at the top stitching, as you fold this down, it should be even across there, the distance from it, as you fold that down. So you feel those pleat markers. You don't want to pull it out, but you want that to be tight and snug. Right like that. Then it's even. Okay, then we're going to tape it down or pin it. This would be a really good time to have those magnetic clips or something. I could clip it to, little magnets or something. Okay, now I've been moving all around, so I'm going to make sure my lining is still good. And it is. So now we're going to come back in here. We're going to do our final pleat marker. And you can kind of see this is lining up well because these are actually staying in line down here too. Okay, so step 6. This is our third and final pleat marker. And be careful as it comes across here. Yep, mine's going to do that. See, it would have got stuck there. It would have got stuck right here in this little lip if I hadn't just pulled it up there. So be mindful of that on your machine, if yours is as fussy as mine. We're doing good here because it's cotton. This is the point where I started to have trouble with the faux suede bag. So actually we don't need to, we can leave this the way it is right now. So I'm using a 90-14 needle. When I got to this point on the other bag, I needed to move up to a 116 needle. But here I'm just keeping it. So now we're going to run the step for our placements for our D-ring strap connectors. Watch that zipper pull. And I can tell I'm going to need to adjust those a little bit because we don't want it, it's starting up here, we want it underneath here, so I will do that. So what I'm going to do is the tack down is good and long, so that's fine. By the time you get the file, the D-ring strap connector will start down here. Okay, so I'm going to take one of our D-ring strap connectors, and we want to lay this down so that you have at least a 1/2 inch overhang of that placement. Now, I know I can get a little bit closer, and on side D-ring strap connectors, I don't like to have all that extra material, so I'm actually going to overlap mine a little bit more, probably about 3/4 of an inch. And actually probably what I will do is, just so that I can make sure they're even, I'm just going to line these up, and I'm just going to trim mine down a little bit. But you don't need to do this. It just depends on how comfortable you are with your machine, how close it is to the edge. So about a 1/2 inch, you're still going to line it up about a 1/2 inch over there. But I have enough room. I know that I have enough room for my presser foot to get past right here, the stitching. We better hope. Kimberly could be totally wrong and break a needle. Okay, and again, over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure it's lined up with the bottom of this and about a 1/2 inch overhang. Now, this is a really critical piece for me. My machine likes to go all over the place, and it could hit the hardware. So I'm going to stay on camera so I can show you how I handle that in case you have the same machine as I do. So we're going to go ahead and start 8. And what happens is, once it comes to draw the line, I don't want it to come over here. So I'm going to reach back here, and the presser foot, watch my presser foot, it goes up even higher. So I'm going to reach back manually as it's moving and raise that up. And you can do it. So we're going to run step 8 now. Oops, might help to put the presser foot down. I don't have this. Hold on a minute. Did I not line that up well? Oh, I didn't. I lined it up in the wrong place. See, I could tell it was getting ready to start, and it was too far down. Okay, try this again. I like to leave that extra 1/2 inch overhang because it gives a little bit of cantilever effect to the strap so that it doesn't come out of the bag. Okay, so now it's going to stitch this down. Watch your finger. And now I'm going to lift up. Hear the blade stop. See what it did? It would have hit that. So as soon as I hear the cutter stop is when I do it. So listen again. That sound was the cutter. And yes, this is a little bit off. Don't pay attention. It'll be correctly positioned when you get your file. Okay, I'm going to trim away all these little loosies. And now we're ready to put our flap on. Before we add our flap, though, especially if you're using poly mesh, you want to go ahead and trim out this material right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, even though I'm using the washable. So remember how we do it. We get our blade in there, and then we glide it across the seam. And I'm going to have to hold on to this tight because I taped that in. Glide across. Make sure you are not touching anything underneath here. If you forget to open this, your bag is not going to work. So see how close it is? I am not giving you much room at all. So you need to make sure that all of this is folded out of the way. Okay, so now we need our flap. And in between the videos here, I went ahead, and it's showing here because I ironed it. I went ahead and embedded my flap, my snap in here because I didn't want to see the white on top of it. So our flap is going to go right side facing up. And you know it, a 1/2 inch above the line. So we're going to go ahead and mark this placement here. And actually what you can do is see where the stitches end right here. I'm going to fold that over just so it's even on the top. See where the seam ends right there and right there. So that's giving me a mark so I can line it up with this registration line. Now on my, this flap is a little smaller since it's a 5x7. But on the bigger ones, on my first bag, if you've seen that, the purple one, I actually got the flap off center on accident. But that might be a look you might want to look like. So I designed it for most of the sizes with the flap hanging over the zipper like this. But if you prefer having it that way, then just go ahead and line your flap up so that you'll be able to see your zipper pull. And just line it up right here with your top stitching, like that, if that's the look you want. Now, in this case, that's actually the look we're going to get because that is actually where our centering mark is. So again, we're going to get our centering mark here and fold this back and make sure it's even with that line, the stitching from the first step. You see that? Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and tape this down. And just like before, we're going to be very mindful as she goes across the machine, because those D-ring strap connectors and that zipper pull are right there, and we don't want the machine to get stuck on those. And you can also make sure it's lined up well by looking at how close it is to this. Make sure it's even there. Okay. So now we are ready for 9, which is going to tack this baby down. And I'm sorry I'm doing a lot of this on film because these are such short steps. Make sure your lining is pulled out down here. And then we're going to run step 9. And that's just going to tack that down. It'll get formally stitched into the bag in the final steps. Okay, so now we're ready to tack down, or I'm sorry, do our exterior seams. So we have our little pleat marker right here. We're going to fold up our exterior against that pleat marker after we remove the tape. And this, you're going to have extra at the top. I designed it that way just to give you more wiggle room, because some materials will actually take up more space in the fold. But now you can see how the stitches are pulling right there. You don't want to pull them out, but you want it to be taut. So it's right on top of each other. And it should be straight across on the sides too, which it is. And then we're going to tape this down. You don't really need to put tape at the top, but you can if you want, or a pin. It's a place where you could pin it to the stabilizer actually to hold it tautly. Like this. Something like that. Okay. So I'm not going to do this on camera because this is going to take a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to seam this side. It's going to jump over here and do a couple of running stitches because we want to start stitching from the top down. So it's going to do some running stitches here so it can bring the presser foot up here, because if we stop here and then go like this, we might get stuck on hardware. So stitch here, running stitch, and then it's going to come up here and do that side. So I'm going to run that. That's step 10, and I'll be right back. Here we are. And you'll see the reason I do come from the top is it's hard to start down here. It's so thick, but it did push a little bit. That's okay. One thing I forgot to mention is what I normally do is with vinyl is I cut a piece of tearaway to fit on top of here, because what I find happens with my machine is the presser foot will come down here and it might get stuck up on this lip. So if you put some tearaway down there, it really is mostly needed for right here. If you put tearaway there, it'll glide, the presser foot will stay there and it won't get stuck anywhere. So now we're ready to go and flip to the back side. So we're going to flip our lining up. And then we're going to tape it down. So we're going to run it against that bottom marker there. And again, we're just going to make sure it's slightly above that line, like 1/16. That'll just take up some of the extra bulk. The top should be, it should be covering the top up here. And then we're going to tape it really well. Okay, now we're going to run step 11, which is going to stitch from here to here. There is some running stitches here to get the presser foot in the right place again. But it's going to stitch from here to here, leave an opening to turn the bag, stitch from here to here, and then again a running stitch here, and then it's going to come up here and stitch down. So I'm going to run that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, and just like that, we're almost done. This is where we're at now. And again, you're going to see you have 2 more steps, but really we only have 1 step. So we're going to run step 12. That's going to be our last one. 13 is just going to be to stop our machine from coming back to the center. So I'm going to go ahead and run that real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, guys, and here we are. This is the front, and this is the back. Go ahead and remove all the tape. I think I already removed it from the front. So one thing we're going to do is when we cut or trim our bag, we want to leave extra right here to help turn at the turning hole. So we're going to cut that like a 1/2 inch, and everything else will be 1/4 inch. So just wanted to highlight that to you. So right here. Okay. And yeah, I have way extra up here, but keep those scraps. You never know when they might come in handy. They make good D-ring strap connectors and so forth. Okay, now I like to try and salvage as much of the extra stabilizer as I can. So I get in here and I kind of fold up. I've got to get this out of my way first. Oh, I can't see and do this at the same time. I'm having trouble. So I kind of fold up one side to loosen up to the stabilizer. Don't cut into your fabric. That would be horrible. But this helps get it out of the seam as well, so it's not so thick in the seam. And then I just kind of trim it along. Pull up that strap connector. You don't want to tear that. And these scissors might be a better job to do this function. And I left some tape in there. That's okay. You do not want to cut into your fabric. It's the most important thing. That piece probably really wasn't salvageable, but the other pieces are. So what happens is when I have a bag that has a lot of satin stitching in it, then I just slide one of these scraps behind underneath the hoop, and it gives extra reinforcement to those stitches. So this is that wash away stuff. So I want to get as much of that out of there as I can, because even though it washes away, it can leave a hardened space where it was at. So I'm still, oops, be very careful. Do not cut into your flap. Just try and get as close to that as you can to get it out. If you did everything right, you're going to be able to open up your bag. But if we got a little too close, then our bag's not going to open. One of the natures of this bag, I think I probably mentioned this at the intro, is that it the back of it will be slightly taller than the front. It's just the nature. That's how I can do it, of accomplishing it in the hoop like this. There we go. All that trouble in that piece wasn't salvageable either. This piece is. But still, we want it out of our seam allowance. We don't want this in our seam allowance because it takes up space. Okay, so now I'm going to cut from the back first because I don't want to cut this space off. I did in my demo bag. So I actually cut in at an angle like that on both sides so I don't forget. And then go ahead and you can turn to the front now and cut your seam allowance. You know, where your lining is going to end. And then you can cut your seam allowance. It's just easier to do from the front because you can see the stitching better. Now the corners, the way we're going to handle those is just kind of taper it slightly like this to reduce the bulk. So here we're going to taper this slightly and then trim. Ooh, do not, I almost did I? I kind of sort of did. Don't trim in, don't cut off this tag. Instead, fold this over to this side, and I'll show you the proper way on the other side. You don't want to cut that even with the bag. This is a small bag, so it's not going to be a big deal. So what you do when you get to these, let me just show you on the other side that I didn't mess up. So when you get to this strap connector is at, oh, that wasn't the strap connector. I did cut off the strap connector though. Ooh. When you get to the strap connector, you want to fold this back and cut your seam allowance like this, and then flip it over and do the same thing here so that you don't cut this strap connector even with the bag. And I goofed up on the other side. So you have to fold it back and do that. And now you can go ahead and trim the rest of this off. So I accidentally did over here. I wasn't paying attention. I trimmed it off. See, now it's too close. It's even there. So don't do that. Okay, flip this around. I'm going to go ahead and trim this lining a little bit more small. Oh, I guess I didn't get it that much smaller anyway. And this is a double stitch up here, so you should be safe. And then go ahead and taper the corners. That corner's already okay. I do it at an angle. I don't like to do just a straight cut off. Okay. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to save these pieces. You never know what they might come in handy for. Now we get to turn the bag. Oh, and we don't need the whole lining, the whole bag to be this wide. So go ahead and fold the lining back and trim the rest of the bag, that little flap off. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and I like to fold the lining back and rub it against the stitching so we have a place to mark for our glue. And I have misplaced my glue. Where's my glue? I will be right back. Okay, I found it. Sorry about that. It was underneath the table. I'm just getting tired. But I want to show you what happens if you're not careful with this glue. Once it's been opened, doesn't do it until it's opened. If you lay it on the side or it falls, the gases build up in there and it all squeezes out here and you have a complete mess. And this will ruin wood floors, wood tables. Ask me how I know. So this bottle is basically almost empty because it's spilled out a couple of times and I didn't realize it. Okay, we're going to need a couple of these clips to help hold our bag closed while we're gluing it. So now we're going to reach inside here. And this is the benefit of this little lanyard tripod is I can get you in here really close. And this is a very small hole because this is a small bag. So what I try to do is I try to get one corner out first. This is also why I did not use vinyl. So be mindful of the materials you're using based on the size of the bag as well. Because you're going to have a smaller opening and it's going to be harder to get the vinyl through. So it will come through. Just keep working on it and get that little corner through. And like birthing a baby, not that I've ever done that, but those who have told me, once you get the first one through, the rest of it usually comes through pretty easily. So just then work. So now I've got this piece out. Now just work and push the rest through the hole. And it's probably going to get really wrinkled because this is a small one, but it's okay. This Sofu Plus doesn't get too wrinkly. If it does, I just put down a pressing cloth and steam over it with the iron and it's fine. Hopefully this isn't too wrinkly. And not something if you have arthritis. Hemostats are very helpful for doing this. You can use them for a third hand to help pull it out and push out the corners. Just had mine sitting here, but now I'm not seeing them. And then I'm just trying to be really careful not to pull my seams open. I do back stitch them, but still, if you pull too hard, you can still rip them open. Okay, so there we go. Got most of it out now. And I can already tell we did not close our bag. I can feel the opening at the top. So bravo for us. That's why it's so critical when you do that first step of stitching that you make sure that that is folded down underneath that line. Okay, so now go ahead and pull it out as much as you can. And down here, you're going to get the little pleat markers are there. Don't worry about making sure those look exactly right because they're going to be on the inside of the bag. So now here's the fun part. So get our glue open. You can actually turn this all the way right side out if you want. Make sure everything looks good first. I'm not going to do that, but you could. So I fold this in, and I actually end up finger pressing it just a tiny bit under where the original one was. Okay. Now we're going to fold this down, and we're going to press against that stitching and fold it right there. Kind of press against it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run the glue along this line, and then I'm going to show you how, because once I have the glue on it, it's hard to see. Once we have the glue on it, then we're going to pull this little lining piece that we have a fold up into the glue like that. I'll show you, but it's kind of hard to see once I get the glue going. Glue. You want to work fast because you don't want to keep that glue on covered too long. There we go. So you see how it's just, I'm rubbing it right on this tip, the stitching line. Nobody's going to turn this inside out and see that, but it just makes for a cleaner finish. Then this little piece, and I need one more clip. This is Fabri-Tac from Beacon, not sponsored. I'm not authorized to talk about them. I'm just a happy consumer. I prefer it because it sets up in about 1 minute so that it's strong enough that you can turn the bag the right side out. And then it fully cures, I believe, in 24 hours. So even like in half an hour, if you realize you did something wrong, you could pull it apart and fix whatever it was you did wrong. Okay, so I'm going to just give this a second because it's a short seam. And now I'll show you the hemostats I was talking about earlier. So these are hemostats, and you they're jointed here together like this. So you push like that and they come open. And then this becomes your third hand. So you could reach it in there and then clip it together and it stays. So now you boomers and 70s wild children out there might have been used to one of these on a very small format. I never partook, but my brothers did. So I'm very familiar with the equipment they used. But okay, that's good enough. You see it's not coming apart, even though it's a little wet still. I'm going to go ahead and fold this bag. This is the lining side. We're going to push it to get to the right side out. And I'm going to try and make sure I push over on this side because that side's still a little damp. And this is where those hemostats would come in handy. You could actually reach in there and use them to pull it open. Oh, I missed. Oh, that's just the tape I had for the flap to hold it down. Yeah, this is definitely going to need pressing. Should plug in my little iron right now to do that. I will do that off camera. Because frankly, I'm tired. I've been doing this too long. Nobody wants my medical trauma, but if you follow me in the group, oops, I got a little tape in the seam. That's okay. People who've been following me know I've had some medical challenges and sitting is really difficult for me, and I've now reached my max. If I could figure out how to hook a chaise lounge up and be able to use my embroidery machine so I could lay down while I do it, oh man, that would be heavenly. But I want to get this pulled out and show you the beauty of what makes this bag gusseted. So I'm having trouble getting my hand in there because it's such a small bag. So this is where our 4-in-1 tool comes in handy. Use this little piece here and push it in there, and it'll help push those corners out for you. Okay, now once you get the corners worked out, this is when you see the little triangles that form the gusset. So just make sure those are pulled out on both sides. It's not over here. You got to work it a little bit to pull that out. And on the inside of the bag, see now it's coming out, you can take your pointy end and push it in there and then push out on those corners. You want that little triangle at the bottom to be even on both sides. So you just kind of work those corners until you see that little triangle is basically even on both sides. Come over here, work it. There you go. And then what you want to do if you're using cloth, you can use your iron, or if you're using vinyl, just use your hands, kind of lightly fold across where those little corners meet. It should be even here. And then just kind of form a rectangle there. but you don't have, this is too short. It's not wanting to do it. So we're just going to do it individually. So you're just going to form this line, and it just helps shape the bag at the end of those triangles. I just messed this side up. There we go. And it should be, this should be about 1.5 inches across if you did everything correctly. And then I'm just finger pressing it, and that just helps give this shape. But I'm going to come back in and press this with the iron. And then along the side here, see how this looks all messy? Take this, again, your tool, and rub that along on the inside along that seam. And that helps open that seam up. Do that on both sides. Okay. Oh, here we go. So I'm going to add the tab off camera. But here's our bag, our finished bag. How cute is that? This is so tiny. But, you know, some girls only have like the small little phones. So this would be great for them. Okay, I will show a picture. You would have already seen this at the beginning of the video, all finished up. But you want to just go ahead, and what I like to do is fill up this with whatever you're going to have in it, your phone or whatever, and then fold your flap down, and then use a pen and mark where your stamp should go, and then put your stamp in. When you put your stamp in, make sure you're only going through the zipper pocket lining, not the main bag lining. Okay, guys, thanks so much. I hope you enjoy this bag, and see you on the next one. Oops, one more thing. You thought you were done with me before I go. While I'm waiting for my iron to heat up, this is the time when you want to go in and use your water to trim that out. So, that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.